There is something hell cannot handle. It's not a sword. It's not a storm. It's not a sermon. It is a woman who has detached herself from needing anything outside of God. When a woman no longer fears loss, when she is no longer moved by manipulation, when her heart is anchored in the invisible, she becomes untouchable. That's the kind of woman the devil avoids because she can't be controlled. You see, the most dangerous person on earth is not the one with the most money, not the one with the loudest voice, not even the one with the greatest intellect. It is the person, especially a woman, whose faith is anchored in the unshakable word of God. Because when a woman decides that nothing in this world holds her, nothing in this world can break her. Darkness survives by deception. It thrives in confusion. But faith brings light, and light exposes lies. The moment a woman refuses to allow her emotions to govern her responses, she is no longer a servant. She becomes a general. Because faith does not consult feelings. Faith is not a mood. Faith is a law. And when a woman begins to live by that law, everything around her must align or be removed. The enemy fears a woman who has mastered the art of spiritual detachment. She is in the world, but not of it. She serves, but is not enslaved. She loves, but she is not dependent. She gives, but she does not bleed for approval. And that, my friends, is a holy terror to the kingdom of darkness. Because once you detach from people's opinions, from the timeline of culture, from the pressure to be seen or liked, you become dangerous. You move in a different realm. A woman of faith does not need to explain herself. She does not announce her purpose. She walks in it. She does not panic when doors close. She praises the God who shuts them because she knows something the enemy hopes she never discovers, that everything she thought she needed, she already has in the presence of God. The most powerful transformation happens when a woman begins to see her value through the eyes of eternity. When she realizes that she was not born to chase attention, but to command spiritual authority. When she understands that her strength is not in how much she feels, but in how well she obeys, because faith does not bend to circumstances. It speaks to them. Faith does not avoid the fire. It walks through it. And when you see a woman walking through the fire without smelling like smoke, you're looking at someone hell could not seduce. Too many women have confused attachment with love. But faith knows how to let go and still remain full. Faith does not cling. Faith is confident enough to release. A woman of faith can let you go and not lose her mind. She can walk away from what breaks her and still bless it. She can say goodbye to what others die to keep because she's not looking for life in things. She carries life within her. The mark of spiritual maturity is the ability to stand in peace while everything around you is screaming for your attention. A woman who is emotionally grounded in her purpose will not be shaken by gossip, rejection, or betrayal. Her stability is not emotional, it is eternal. And when the enemy cannot get to your mind, he cannot stop your assignment. That's why I say hell trembles not when a woman prays loudly, but when she lives quietly in authority. When her yes is to God and her no is to distraction. When her silence speaks louder than 1,000 arguments. When she can sit in a storm and sleep like Jesus did because she knows who holds the boat. The most powerful weapon in God's arsenal is not always seen in pulpits or on platforms. Sometimes she is a mother raising a child in righteousness. Sometimes she's a single woman building a business without compromising her values. Sometimes she's the widow who still worships. Sometimes she's the girl who said no when everyone expected her to say yes. These are the women faith has built, and they are dangerous. Because darkness cannot intimidate a woman who is not afraid to lose anything except her relationship with God. When she reaches that level of faith, she becomes a fortress. And when a woman becomes a fortress, she is no longer looking for rescue. She becomes a place of refuge for others. Let me tell you something. The enemy does not fear a loud woman. He fears a focused one. One whose identity is not in a man, not in a mirror, not in her past, and not in her pain. A woman who has passed through suffering and came out with revelation is a woman who will not settle for imitation. She is done with counterfeit joy. She has seen the real thing, and that makes her untouchable. Darkness is loud, but faith is louder in silence. When a woman stands still in faith, mountains move, demons flee, and heaven responds, because a woman of faith is not just waiting on a miracle. She is the miracle. She is a threat, not because of her beauty, not because of her voice, but because of the spirit that rests on her. And when you carry that spirit, you walk with the authority of the one who called you. And when you walk in that authority, the enemy has no choice but to back off. Faith is not emotional. Faith is conviction based on divine truth. Emotions fluctuate, but truth remains consistent. That's why a woman of faith doesn't base her decisions on how she feels in a moment, but on what she knows from eternity. When she walks by faith, she is not swayed by the winds of circumstance or the opinions of people. She has learned that feelings are indicators, not instructors. They can inform her, but they cannot lead her. The Word of God becomes her compass, not her mood swings, because faith is rooted in principle, not preference. The enemy works through emotional instability. He thrives in chaos and confusion, hoping to catch a woman in her lowest moment and whisper lies that sound like truth. But a woman of faith has built her house on the rock. She may feel pain. She may feel fear, but she does not obey those feelings. She speaks to them. She tells her soul what the Word says and not the other way around. That's where her power lies, not in pretending she doesn't feel, but in refusing to be governed by what she feels. Faith does not deny emotion. It disciplines it. And a woman who has mastered this discipline becomes spiritually dangerous. Because when she speaks, she's not venting, she's declaring. When she prays, she's not begging, she's commanding. When she moves, she's not guessing, she's obeying. Her faith is not emotional hype, it's eternal truth made manifest through her life. She doesn't need goosebumps to believe. She doesn't need a sign to move. She doesn't need applause to continue, because she's not living to feel better. She's living to fulfill purpose. And faith, true faith, is not a feeling you visit. It's a place you live from. A woman of faith does not react. She responds by revelation. Reaction is immediate and emotional, driven by the senses and circumstances. It comes from the soul, not the spirit. But response, true, godly response, is birthed from a place of stillness, wisdom, and divine clarity. When a woman has trained herself to respond instead of react, she is no longer a slave to external pressure. She becomes a steward of internal peace. The difference is not in what she faces, but in how she processes what she faces. The enemy thrives in triggering emotional reactions. He wants her to speak too soon, move too fast, or withdraw too early. He pushes her into premature decisions and unstable emotions. But when a woman of faith learns to pause, pray, and perceive, she short-circuits the devil's plan. Her response becomes a weapon of accuracy. She is not just reacting to what is happening, she is discerning what is behind it. Revelation gives her an advantage. It allows her to see beyond the surface. When others are caught in emotional storms, she can stand in spiritual silence and hear the whisper of God. And in that whisper is her strategy. While the world says fight back, she may be led to forgive. While others say walk away, she may be led to stand, because she is not governed by impulse, but by instruction. This posture makes her unpredictable to the enemy and unshakable in adversity. She doesn't allow people's behavior to dictate her peace. She doesn't return insult for insult or pressure for pressure. Instead, she lifts her eyes to the source, listens to the Spirit, and moves with purpose. That's why her life carries weight, because her decisions are not random. They're prophetic. They're not reactive. They're redemptive. Spiritual detachment is not a lack of love. It is proof of focus and trust in God. When a woman detaches from the things of this world, she is not disconnecting from people out of bitterness or pride. She is aligning her soul with the higher calling of her spirit. Detachment does not mean she does not care. It means she refuses to be controlled. It is the discipline of loving deeply without losing herself in the process. It is the wisdom to release what hinders her walk with God, even if it once felt essential. Many confuse detachment with rejection or coldness, but in truth, it is maturity. It is the recognition that her identity is not rooted in relationships, outcomes, or opinions. It is anchored in her Creator. When a woman learns to detach spiritually, she does so with full confidence that whatever is meant for her cannot be stolen, and whatever is not will never satisfy her soul. She no longer clings to what is fading, because her eyes are set on the eternal. The enemy cannot manipulate a detached woman. He cannot trap her with fear of loss, nor bait her with promises of false belonging. Her heart has been trained to worship without needing applause, to serve without needing recognition, and to walk alone, if necessary, without feeling abandoned. That kind of woman becomes a mystery to darkness because nothing the enemy offers can move her. Detachment is not about building walls. It's about maintaining boundaries that protect her purpose. It's the understanding that her first assignment is not to please man, but to please God. And when that becomes her focus, everything else finds its proper place. She loves, but she is not enslaved. She gives, but she is not depleted. She attaches herself only to what heaven approves. The enemy fears women who no longer need validation from people. As long as a woman seeks approval from others, she remains vulnerable to manipulation. But the moment she discovers her worth in the eyes of God, she breaks free from the cycle of pleasing, performing, and pretending. Validation becomes a prison when it comes from man, but it becomes a weapon when it comes from God. Because once a woman knows who she is in Christ, no one else can redefine her. A woman who walks in divine identity no longer asks, "Do they see me?" She asks, "Does heaven approve of me?" Her sense of worth is no longer tied to compliments, relationships, or roles. She is no longer flattered by attention, nor destroyed by rejection. She has transcended the need to be liked because she has been chosen. That realization turns her into a spiritual force. The enemy loses control when a woman no longer needs a seat at the table because she knows she is already seated in heavenly places. She does not compete, compare, or conform. Her validation comes from the one who created her, not the ones who misunderstand her. That's why her presence disturbs the darkness, because she is unmoved by praise and untouched by criticism. She doesn't shrink to fit in, nor does she stretch to impress. She simply walks in truth. People-pleasing is a silent form of bondage, but when she is delivered from the hunger for external validation, she becomes anchored in God's affirmation. That's when she becomes dangerous, because now her yes is real, her no is sacred, her silence speaks louder than performance, and the enemy can no longer use people's opinions as chains to hold her back. She is free, and a free woman cannot be controlled, only called. Detachment from outcomes is a sign of total trust in God's timing. When a woman releases her need to control how things turn out, she enters a deeper realm of faith. It means she no longer worships results. She worships the one who holds them. She is not moved by how fast it happens, how loud it looks, or how others measure her progress. She understands that God's calendar is not bound to her clock. Trusting him fully means surrendering not just the prayer, but the timing, the path, and the outcome. This kind of trust produces peace and uncertainty. It allows her to walk through seasons without needing full explanations. She doesn't panic when doors close. She doesn't grow bitter when the answer is delayed, because she knows that delay is not denial, it's preparation. She has learned to rest in what she cannot see, because she is anchored in who she knows. When outcomes are no longer her idol, obedience becomes her lifestyle. She does her part, and she leaves the rest in God's hands. The enemy loses ground when he can no longer make her anxious about the future. He can't tempt her with shortcuts or distractions, because she's not desperate for results. She's loyal to the process. Her posture is not passive, but surrendered. She still works, prays, and believes, but she is not attached to how or when the fruit appears. That kind of detachment isn't apathy, it's spiritual maturity. She knows that what is for her cannot be missed, and what passes her by was never assigned to her destiny. Her confidence is not in the certainty of the outcome, but in the character of the God she follows. And that kind of trust terrifies darkness, because it cannot be rushed, bribed, or broken. It just keeps walking. A woman of faith does not cling. She releases and receives from heaven. Clinging is the language of fear, but releasing is the language of trust. When a woman clings, she is trying to hold together what she believes she needs to survive. But when she walks by faith, she understands that everything she needs flows from God, not from people, possessions, or positions. Her hands are open, not because she has nothing, but because she trusts God to fill them with what aligns with her assignment. Clinging limits her movement. It binds her to the past, to unhealthy attachments, and to the fear of loss. But release positions her for divine exchange. When she releases her own understanding, she receives God's wisdom. When she releases toxic relationships, she creates space for divine connections. When she releases her plans, she makes room for God's greater strategy. Her strength is not in holding on, it is in letting go at the right time. The woman who lives this way is not careless. She is confident. She knows that God never takes without intending to replace, multiply, or purify. She no longer begs for what has left because she believes in the God who restores and redeems. Releasing is not weakness, it's worship. It says, God, I trust you more than I trust what I have. This posture makes her a vessel. Heaven can use her because she's not full of herself, her fear, or her need to control. She becomes available for divine assignments because she isn't tied to anything that competes with God's voice. She is flexible, movable, and responsive. She doesn't chase, she waits, she listens, and she receives. And what she receives from heaven carries more weight, more power, and more peace than anything she could ever hold on to by force. Emotional independence is not rebellion. It is spiritual maturity. A woman who has developed emotional independence is not disconnected or cold. She is deeply rooted. She has learned that her emotions are part of her soul, but they do not dictate her spirit. She no longer allows her day to rise or fall based on how others treat her, what they say, or what they withhold. Her joy is not conditional. Her peace is not borrowed. She carries her emotional atmosphere from within, not from what surrounds her. The enemy seeks to entangle her in emotional chaos because unstable emotions lead to unstable decisions. But when a woman becomes emotionally independent, she becomes untouchable. She doesn't swing from highs to lows based on people's presence or absence. She doesn't chase comfort from others. She draws strength from the well within her, the Spirit of God. Her responses are measured. Her discernment is sharp, and her silence speaks wisdom. This kind of woman is not hard-hearted. She is whole. She can love without losing herself. She can be present without being dependent. Her relationships are not built on need, but on mutual purpose and honor. She doesn't manipulate or allow herself to be manipulated because she no longer lives to please. She lives to serve the will of God. She has grown beyond the approval of the crowd. She has wept her way into strength. She has walked through seasons of loneliness and discovered that she was never alone. Now she carries stability in her spirit that intimidates instability in others. Her emotions have been trained to follow her purpose, not fight it. And that makes her leadership secure, her prayers effective, and her presence powerful. Because a woman who no longer needs to be rescued emotionally becomes a place of rescue for others. When a woman of faith learns to remain silent in moments of provocation, she is demonstrating kingdom power. Silence is not weakness, it is mastery. The enemy thrives on reaction. He waits for her to speak out of anger, defend from insecurity, or retaliate from pain. But when she chooses silence, not from fear, but from discernment, she disarms the attack. Her restraint becomes a weapon, not a retreat, because silence, led by the Spirit, is louder than any argument. The woman who walks in this kind of wisdom understands that not every battle is worth her voice. She has discerned the difference between being right and being righteous. She no longer needs to prove her point because she knows the one who justifies her. Her silence is not the absence of a response. It is the presence of strategic authority. She allows her fruit to speak. She lets her character speak. She trusts the Lord to vindicate what is misunderstood. This kind of silence terrifies darkness because it reveals maturity. The enemy cannot read a quiet spirit. He cannot trace her thoughts or provoke a reaction. She is unshaken, and that composure makes her powerful. She does not react to rumors, respond to slander, or waste words on empty conversations. She listens with heaven's ear and speaks only when the Spirit gives her utterance. She knows that timing is everything. A word spoken out of season can cause more harm than good. But silence, maintained in wisdom, can shift atmospheres. It protects her peace, preserves her strength, and positions her for divine intervention. Her silence is not passive, it's prophetic. Because in stillness, she hears the strategy. In quietness, she regains strength. And when she finally speaks, her words carry the weight of heaven, not emotion, but authority. A woman of faith is not moved by absence. She is anchored by presence. When people walk away, when relationships change, when support is withdrawn, she does not crumble. She does not beg to be chosen, nor does she chase what has departed. Her foundation is not built on who stayed, but on who sent her. She understands that divine purpose sometimes requires divine separation. She knows that not every presence is a blessing, and not every absence is a blessing, and not every absence is a loss. The enemy wants her to equate loss with failure, to see absence as rejection. But she has matured past emotional dependency. She has walked through seasons where God allowed the crowd to leave so she could find her true voice. She has learned that presence does not always mean alignment, and silence does not always mean abandonment. Her discernment tells her that subtraction is sometimes the hand of God removing distractions. This kind of woman becomes dangerous because she no longer clings to people for identity. She knows who she is with or without their validation. Her stability is rooted in her assignment, not in her circle. She can stand alone without losing her fire. She can walk alone without losing her direction. She has met God in the silence, and he has become enough. That's why darkness trembles when she stands alone, because even in isolation, she is not alone. She is surrounded by divine presence, and that presence sustains her. She does not need a crowd to feel called. She does not need company to feel confident. She moves by instruction, not by emotion. She does not fight for connections that have expired. She releases with grace, walks with courage, and listens for the next direction. Because she knows when God removes, he always replaces with better, with greater, with purpose-aligned strength. A woman of faith walks in quiet authority that doesn't need to announce itself. Her strength is not in how loud she speaks, but in how deeply she lives. She doesn't boast about her power, yet when she enters a room, the atmosphere shifts. She doesn't parade her anointing, yet demons recognize her presence. Because authority isn't something she wears for show, it's something she carries in her spirit. It's built in the secret place, forged in prayer, and confirmed by obedience. This quiet authority cannot be imitated or faked. It is the result of consistent surrender, deep revelation, and spiritual discipline. She doesn't demand respect. She commands it without words. People may not understand her, but they can't deny the weight she carries. She doesn't need to be the center of attention because she's already seated in the center of God's will. And when a woman knows her place in the kingdom, she's not desperate to prove herself in the world. The enemy fears this kind of woman because she's not loud with noise. She's loud with substance. She speaks when the Spirit prompts, and when she speaks, her words carry fire. She doesn't waste her voice trying to win arguments. She uses it to decree, to prophesy, to shift realities. Her silence is powerful, and her speech is intentional. Every move she makes is ordered. Every step is aligned, and every decision is birthed in prayer. She is not driven by reaction, but by revelation. Not guided by fear, but by faith. And her quiet confidence becomes her covering. The devil doesn't fear her emotions. He fears her alignment. Because she's no longer driven by external battles. She's focused on divine purpose. And when purpose and authority meet, even in silence, the kingdom of darkness trembles. A woman of faith is not a fragile figure draped in fear. She is a divine weapon forged in the fire of obedience. She walks with the weight of heaven behind her and the authority of the kingdom within her. She does not scream for attention, but creation responds to her presence. She is dangerous to darkness, not because she fights like the world, but because she wars from the Spirit. Her silence can shake strongholds. Her prayers can dismantle demonic agendas. Her posture, calm, steady, unmoved, is a declaration that she trusts a God who never loses. She is not dependent on approval, applause, or attachments. She is grounded in identity, governed by revelation, and guided by purpose. You can take the crowd from her, but you can't take her calling. You can strip the stage, but you can't silence her assignment, because her strength is not in what she carries, it's in who carries her. To the forces of darkness, she is a threat. To the broken, she is a refuge. To heaven, she is a vessel. And when she rises in faith, fully detached from the noise of this world and fully rooted in the voice of her King, there is no force in hell that can stop her. She doesn't just survive, she establishes. She doesn't just endure, she transforms. She doesn't just believe, she becomes. That is the power of a woman of faith. She is not just blessed, she is assigned. Not just called, she is chosen. And when she understands that truth, she doesn't ask for permission to walk in purpose. She takes her place and commands the light to shine.